Hello everyone, this is Tara's son's, I've forgotten his name, well I didn't get his name, so I'm sorry Tara's son, it's really rude of me, but this is his Jackson. I should have to call him Charlie. And it came with a couple of things wrong. We've got some woggly and some broken wires, which we'll come to after, and it had crazy high action and so on and so on. And so I said, lovely low action, precision fret leveling, sort out the electrics, and new Tusq nut and some new string, and some new strings, ding, which will be these 7-string skinny top heavy bottom jobbies, which correspond to the wires that are already on there. Wires. Anyway, so having a quick check over on this nut, quick check on this guitar. Didn't seem anything wrong with it. I checked before I start the video that the truss rod works, which it does. We've got some tuners shedding their little those things. What are they called? The little washers. You can see that little metal washers are broken. Well, actually, it could be the plastic ones. So we're going to have to try and find a few of those somehow. And so I've done quite a bit of work off camera, and this is going to probably have to be over a couple of nights now because I've started this late because I've been doing other things. But yeah, so we've got basically a very good Jackson 7-string guitar. Absolutely nothing wrong with it, basically. And it came with, it's pretty grubby, could do with a nice clean, which I'll give it, fix the electrics, and it came with a lot of curve and relief in the neck, and the action was pretty high. So altogether it was really difficult to play. So the aim of this setup is to lower the action, precision level the frets with the strings tuned up to pitch, and so we're leveling in playing configuration. And I explained to Tara, the mum, explained to her about why I level frets that way, and I'll get into that a bit more as we come into it. Off camera, I took off the original plastic nut, 7-string nut. Now there's a hugely limited, no, that's not the right word really, there's an incredibly limited supply of when it comes to 7-string nuts. So I had to make one from a blank Tusq block, which is quite common, and I use this as the start point to calculate and measure the string spacings and so on and so forth. So we have taken down the nut mostly down to where we should be. Oh no, I think I took my, I took my handy D'Addario tuner back home. Now this is, okay, so looking at the playing action there, it's fine. I'll do the final adjustments with the nut files. So I'm going to just now slack the strings off. The aim will now be to clean off the glue on the face, the front edge of the fingerboard where the original nut was glued on, and we'll just give that a little bit of a clean up with a blade, and then we'll put this new nut on and peg it down. That blade is a bit had it, so it's that one. Can we have a nice clean blade, please? It's a bit oily. I'm going to be needing some new ones. Time to order some new ones. Anyway, so the beauty of doing this sort of thing is that I'm trying to look through the camera, which isn't the best way to do it. What's great is that any and every guitar, almost every guitar, can be made to play beautifully well. And even some of the cheapest, and this isn't a prestige type of guitar, you know, it's not a high budget guitar. It's probably a fairly basic line. I don't know its price point and everything, but you know, it's not super made in Japan style. But it's no reason at all why this shouldn't be a lovely low light player, and more importantly there's no reason why I shouldn't have lovely tuning stability. And that's one of the things that I like to concentrate on most, because tuning stability is so important. Sometimes when you're starting out playing and you're a youngster, you might not see it as that important. A lot of other things, and I remember from when I was young, a lot of other things kind of caught my eye and seemed more important, like the brand of the name on the guitar and so on. But actually, as you get older and you play more, you sort of come to realize that the what really does matter is the tuning stability. So my setup's all about getting a great playing action and a really good tuning stability. So here we have, this is the typical, go on, move, thank you, move, settle down. Now, before it set, just got it in time. This is about getting it lined up in a perfect place. There we have it, that's good. Okay, so I'm just going to put these strings under load to pin down the nut, and then I'll use a tuner in a minute to get them into tune. And we'll get ready then to tackle this guitar. Okay, well, I can use a tuning fork. I found my lost A tuning fork. Interesting. It's okay. Right, so that's the guitar in pitch. Now, the important thing as I'm going along, it's worth thinking that your playing action is comprised of three components. The height of the strings over the first fret, the height of the strings over the last fret, and the curvature of your neck. So I've already adjusted the curvature on the neck, but let's see it again and see what we get. That's very flat. It was loads before. Let's leave it like it is. Now, how did I dial out the curvature in the neck? I used the truss rod, and you need not to be afraid of using the truss rod. So the simple thing about the truss rod in these types of guitars, they're modern truss rods, so you would have to go some distance to break them. And the way to do it is this. If you have too much curvature on the neck, once you've got your strings loaded, and you have to remember it's the strings that tend to pull the neck into a curve, okay? So once the strings are up to pitch, my recommendation is that you hold down the last string on the first and last fret, like so, and then halfway along, you tap down the string to visually and sonically make sure there's a gap in there. All right, and there is a gap here, and that's a tiny amount for a good low action. And the thing to remember is, how much do you need? And my recommendation on that is relief equals a tiny bit more than none. Remember that. And the thing is, okay, if your neck is curved like that, what you do is you put the adjuster in and you dial clockwise, and what happens is you straighten it out. If it's too flat or perhaps even curved that way, you put the adjuster in and you go anti-clockwise, And then what happens is it makes this go down, and it goes either flat or ideally goes to a tiny bit more than none. So your aim is to get a tiny bit more than none. And I would encourage you not to be afraid of adjusting it. So rather than just have me telling it you and saying that's how I've set it, I'd recommend that you take the adjuster, put it in the end here, and you have to wiggle and make sure it fits in perfectly. And then when it's in, you've got strings in the way, so it can be a little bit fiddly. So you can go this side of the string, push it a little bit, get it in, that's nicely fitted. And then if we want more relief, more curvature, crank it clockwise, counterclockwise. Like that. Now that's about what, 40 degrees, 30 degrees or something. That will have made a small difference, but not much. So I could do that a couple of times, maybe 3 times, let's see. 3 times counterclockwise should be allowing the strings now to bend the neck more into a cave-like or concave curve. That's 3 times about 30 degrees. So if I now look at this, and I can see there's a big gap, it's much bigger now, opened up. So I'm going to go backwards, and this time I'm going to aim to go too far. So get this fitted. Very difficult to get in and out sometimes, this thing. There you go. So I've probably gone 30 degrees I've already done. And you can see this is the only hard bit, believe it or not, getting it in and out. It may help if you get a slightly shorter one, like so. That's the wrong size. You could find the same size but with a shorter thing, shorter L, like this one. It'd probably go in a bit easier now. Fit in, and then so I've now gone back to where I was, plus a couple more. Now if you start pushing fairly hard, again, we can't really do much damage, but we have to make sure it's fitted properly before we do the turn, otherwise we run the risk of scuffing that. Now if I go back to here and I check my relief, you can hear it's a tiny click, so it's practically dead flat. We can leave it there if we want, that's playable, but you can see that it doesn't really do any harm. I've taken it from curved, where the downside of it being curved is that it feels quite high action around the middle part. If you think about it, if you think about the curve, let's get that cloth. Let's think about the curve. If this is how your neck is with a lot of relief when it's strung up, so imagine we dialed in a lot of relief, then there's your strings going straight across it. You can see that if these are your frets sort of thing, you can see that the action here is quite high, and it will feel high in the middle of the neck. If we then use our truss rod to flatten the neck underneath the strings, and we go back to something like this, hardly curved at all, you can see that the playing action all the way along is very low, and it doesn't change. There isn't this great big tall playing action in the middle. So it's actually perfectly good to have an almost flat neck. But even if you go to have it flat and you're doing the adjusting, go to the curved side of dead flat, i.e. a tiny bit more. That's your start point, more than none. So I would think, for your own sake, learn how to go beyond those, around either side of that flat point. Go to make it curved and see what happens to your strings, because I can promise you, if you over tightened it, what you get is a backbowed neck which humps And what you'll find is you might still just be able to play the open strings, but if you fret a string here, it'll buzz out. If you fret a string here, it'll buzz out. You might find the strings here, here, and here fretted will play okay, but that's what a backbowed neck will give you. Look up there, backbowed. You don't want that, definitely not. Do you want flat? Well, yes, but make sure you adjust it, keep trying it until you get to the curved side of dead flat, i.e. a tiny bit more than none. It could be as little as I've got here with that little clicking sound when I do that test. Remember doing the test of holding the low E or whatever that string is. I don't know what it is. It's not an E, it's something else. Maybe it'll tell me on the track of the strings. Damn it, it just tells me the numbers. Anyway, whatever this string is, holding it down there and also down on the first fret, and then use your thumb to check. And I can see and hear there's a very tiny gap, but it's almost non-existent. It's probably about 1/100 of a mil. It's really tiny, but it still conforms. It's on the curved side of dead flat, so we can work with that. So that's the first part of your 3 key aspects of your playing action. The next part is your whatchamacallit, your last fret action. Now I'm just looking for something that's, oh dear, gone away. Here it is. Now, because the strings are a bit high over the nut here still, I'm going to cheat, or I'm going to give myself a break, and I'm going to capo these off so that they're touching the first fret. This gives me, until I've altered those, this gives me a fairly reliable idea of what's happening at this end. So now I can have a look, let me get my little rulery thing. Now I can have a look at the height of the action at the last fret. So I use one of these string gauges and I check down here, and on the first fret it's telling me it's just over 1.25, first fret, first string. E is at 1.25 and a bit, and this goes lower and then lower. So what I do, and this is my settings, I will make the first string, the top string, the high E, I want to make it equal exactly 1.25, because I have the experience of knowing what actions will play well. So 1.25, that should be, this one should be up there as well. It's a little bit low at the moment, so I'm now adjusting the saddles on here. I've got different grub screws in here for some reason, but maybe not. Okay, so I'm going to make this one about 1.25, and the same for the next one, the G, and I want to go so that it goes from 1.25 down to about just over 1.5 here. So that's a little bit of a, it's a spread or a gradient. So the first 3 should look like 1.25, perhaps a tiny bit over on the second one, the fraction. It's very, very small amount, so it's very difficult to tell you how much. So I'm just working my way down with these so that I've got 1.25 and a bit on all of these first 3. So 1.25, 1.25, 1.25. This one's too low, this one's too low. So now we're going to go up a bit more on the D and a bit more on this side, and a bit more on the A. Let's have a look at the D. Okay, 1.25 in a bit. Let's do this next one. Let's go this one a tiny bit more. So remember, we're coming over to 1.5 on the last string, whatever that low string is. Now I'm sort of watching the gap, the spread of the gaps here, because I know how that helps me gauge them quite well. Now, although I'm going up slightly with these saddles, the overall feel of the action going to feel very low, and that's because I've taken out the load of curvature in the neck. Remember I said I've taken out the neck, the concave neck relief. Now this one is a bit on the dirty side, so I'm going to have to be, it's got rust in it, so I've got to be very careful to raise this up. If it refuses to, it's rusted. If I can't get this unrusted, I'm going to have to find a way to replace it. I need a sharp, very sharp thing. Sorry about this little distraction. Let's try a very, very sharp this and a sharp this. So old guitars that don't get treated too well build up a load of rust, and this is what happened here. Now if I can get this further in, I should be able to get a turn on it. There we go. Didn't need to go worry too much further about that. So I want a 1.5 here, and I can see the 1.5. I'm not quite there yet. So it's really important that we don't set it under the chosen action, because otherwise I know we'll be struggling to make it play, and we don't want to set an impossible target from the outset. So this one needs to come up now a bit. So I'm going to now balance these across with a little bit more height. There we go. So once we've got a good balance on all of them, so 1.5 just about, 1.25, 1.25. So we still need to come up a little bit on these. Once we've got this done, this will be the important part of the action setting done. And then we'll be in the position to get it ready for fret leveling, precision fret leveling. And precision fret leveling is the business of choosing the action we want, which is what I'm doing right now. Now, I'm very low here still. Choosing the action I want and then making the frets work with that action. And normally, unless you do this sort of leveling, what you find is that you are basically having to live with the action that the frets permit. So the unevenness in your frets, and all guitars have them, uneven frets, the unevenness dictates basically the action on your guitar. And unless you do this kind of precision leveling, that's what you have to live with. So my job here, or my intention, is to get all these strings at my target height. When I got there, we've got now the curvature correct for the amount of loading of the strings. We've got the last fret action correct by adjusting the saddles. And now the final thing I need to do on the three core parts of the setup is to make sure I get the nut right, but that means getting the first fret action right. So when it comes to, where are we? I've lost me. When it comes to holy crap, I can't see what I'm doing. Yeah, so when it comes to making the guitar play well and stay in tune, the condition of the nut is critical. So what's really important is the material the nut's made out of, as well as the way the slots are cut and the first fret action over the action over the first fret. So to set the action over the first fret, I'm going to use a feeler gauge, and I'm going to use the nut files. So I'm going to start for now with the G, and I'm going to work back to front. So the G, I have a 0.3 setting here, which is my known good first fret action. And I want the G to be at 0.3, and it's currently taller than that. So what I do is I get hold of my correct file, and I'm going to cut into the nut, which is now glued in place. So I'm going to cut downwards and back so that we have the correct angle first and foremost. We need that downwards angle, which I didn't have set to begin with because it's a custom nut and I haven't cut the slots properly yet. So now I've cut them to go backwards, and I'm just concerned about there's a fair old gap still there, so I'll take it back out and I will cut some more. Okay, I think you can see that, can you? Yes. Can you see that? Yes. Okay, so these are my nut files, and they're very important for getting this right. So now I'm cutting a little bit down at the front, so I'm lowering the height of the slot to give me a really nice low, almost perfect first fret action for the G. So that is spot on. I'm just going to get this one up, the B, and I'm going to check. I can see with the shadow it's casting from where I stand and how often I've done this, I can tell the height they're at, what they need. So it's very small amounts of adjustments. So I'm going to get the B, which is the 13/100ths of an inch. And what I'm doing first of all, before I do any lowering at the front, I'm taking down the slot at the back. And then one of the things I like to do is to make sure I know what I'm removing, material I'm removing and what I'm not, is I like to put a bit of pencil in there. In this case, it works better on a white nut because I can't really see on this one. So we're nearly there. So I'll just do it by being careful. So I need my 13 here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a cut down the front, and that will lower it a tiny bit. It's still a little bit higher on the B string. So again, you can imagine that the amount I'm doing, two things I'm doing, taking it down a bit so it's a sloping backwards, and then at the end of that little bit of cutting I'm going to do a little bit that cuts the front edge. So I want it to come up, and that's perfect. I want it to come up and launch off the front edge of the nut. So I'm now going to do the same for the E, which is again pretty high. So I can move that out of the way there. Do the same with the E. This is the 10 gauge. And again, I'm going to start by cutting it backwards. Now in doing so, I'm avoiding cutting the headstock, of course, but make sure I don't. But I want to put a backward slope on this and then cut down a bit. Now any material on this nut that I'm going to end up with that's too much material, I'll hand file this off to make a nicer shape. But to begin with, we're just aiming, in this part, we're just focusing on the height of the string over the first fret. So that's getting the precise height right. And I can do this now because I know I've done it I've got the other parts right. I've got the relief of the neck right, and I've got the height over the last fret right. And now everything I do here is kind of pretty much final. So we're setting the precision action. Now I said to Tara that when you've got this, it's not in tune of course, but when you've got this down to low height, suddenly this becomes incredibly easy to play chords. Obviously it has to be in tune, but you get what I'm on about. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off. This is a slightly different way of going about it here because I'm going to have to undo one of these strings just for the time being. So it's just going to change the relief a tiny bit. And with that in mind, I think that's a pretty good height. I don't really think I need to adjust this, but what I will do is I'll cut the slot backwards, and just to give myself a view, see I've got some graphite in there, so I know when I'm cutting. I'm just going to cut backwards to make sure that the slope. Now, I don't know if you remember, there was a horrible buzzy sound on that high E string before I worked on the slot, and that was because there was no backward slot. It was going over an almost flat piece of saddle nut. Yeah, that's pretty good actually. Yeah, so it was sitting on a flat piece of nut. Since I've now cut it backwards as a slope, it's now solved that, and there's no Sounds like a normal note. Okay, so now I'm going to put this next one in place. I don't know what its tuning is. Let's leave it like that for a second. So this is close to there already, but it's a little bit high. So what I'll do is I'll just push that off to one side, and we're now going to do the D, which will be no D. We've done D. This is going to be the A, which is this one, 36. So again, first principal thing is to cut the slope, the slot backwards, sloping backwards, so we get a nice point for the string to leave the top of the nut with. So a little bit of cutting down, but not much. Close, but I'll do a tiny bit more. What did we say we were doing? We were doing this one, 36. Okay. That'll do me. Will it do me? Let's don't chicken out. See, you've got a bit of room on both of those. Let's not wimp out. Let's do this. So before that one was this one. Let's do a tiny bit of downwards cutting on this one. See, I can see a gap. What was it? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, start there. Okay, nice. Now we're going to the blue, 36. Very nice, very nice. Tiny bit more. So we're blue, yes. Now you might see there's two blues. Like there's another blue. You maybe can't see it from there because I'm zoomed in, but there is in fact another blue there. That one is a bass one, and I'm going to use it for this one because we're right down in the bass string department. Good-o, that's fine. Now for this one, well, that's high up, so this one needs some help. Now normally this is the low E. I'm going to use 2. I'm going to start with this one to help it on its way. Make sure we stay in the groove. So that's done with the wrong one. This is the correct one. Now just to widen it a bit more. Okay, that sits in better. Not far off. Mark with my pencil. Where are we doing? We are doing the last one. So a bit of backwards and a bit of downwards. A bit of downwards, not much. I often get nervous and wimp out when it comes down to this, these lower strings, but they take quite a while to cut, and then sometimes they can cut quite rapidly if you're not expecting it. So in experience, it can go quickly past the point you want to go. Now, what's good is I can watch the shiny pencil reduce as I put some downward cut onto it. Okay, perfect. That is ideal. Now we've got this one, and I will do a bit of cutting with this one first, just to get it established. So we're one size too small for the minute. helps it on its way, gives it an extra bit of cutting to begin with. So let's see where we stand. There's always more on this side. I've copied the original nut, so it's a little bit more room on the outer edge. Yeah, that was. So it hasn't changed. There's more room, spare room here, but that's what you want really. This one's where it should be. Okay, so we've got quite a bit to take down off this low note, and for that we've got this bass one at 65. The actual exact size is 62, but 65 will do just fine. Now this is a new bass one, so I'm expecting it to cut pretty enthusiastically. There we are, 65. So it takes a while. You can see all of this fiddly stuff is taking a while, but you know what? It's worth doing, because these three parts, and the nut that I'm taking care of now, but the neck relief and the last fret action and the first fret action, those things together make up your guitar's playing action. Once we've got those right, nice jazz. Once we've got those right, it will be much easier to play. So I'm just going to now look at setting a little bit more of a curve backwards on here. I'm going to use one of these, the 46, just to kind of try and slope it a bit more. And once I've got these to the height I want, they're going to stay at that height, and then after that I will just go over the top and take away any excess material. There's no need to have material sticking up that's above the strings. Okay, a little bit of downward cut, and then the most of it backwards and sloping. That's a good cut, that bass string. Okay, I think we're there. Woohoo. Right, let's get a note. I think I've confused me. Okay, so now we've got an action set. We've got neck relief set nearly flat, tiny bit more than no relief. Perfect. We've got the last fret action set using the saddles, but taking my height measurements from here, so I know that the heights, because the heights follow the fret, then I know that it's a curve and it's got enough height from 1.25 over here to 1.5 and a little bit over here. And then down at this end, we've got the nut fitted, cut, it's the right material, the slots are cut wide enough, and it's giving the perfect first fret action. Now, having done those three things, really, we've done the bulk of the precision work, except now we come to do the precision fret leveling. But having done the setup, now the leveling part in a way is easy, because what's going to happen is I'm going to get a marker pen and we're going to move off a couple of these strings to begin with. Like so. And we're going to prepare by marking up the frets with marker pen. And then we'll come back on the other side and mark those off. So now at the moment the fingerboard is filthy, and we'll clean all that up in a minute. Don't forget, we've got the wiring to do and the new jack to fit and so on. So we'll take care of all of that. But we'll do this leveling part since we're working in the dirty mode. And we'll stick these back on here like so. Off, and I should probably help that one off as well. Right, so now I'm going to run marker pen on the second half of the frets. So this marker pen helps me to know when I'm level or I've got the frets where I want them. So it's really important to do this, and we use the marker pen twice. Once when we're leveling the frets, like in a minute, and the next time when we're recrowning the frets after leveling them, because leveling them puts a slight flat spot on them, quite obviously. Now I need to be approximately in tune, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Sorry, terrible camera work. Oh, I should be sacked. Right, here we are. Now I'm going to do precision fret leveling. So I get my special tool and my bits and bobs. Now the reason I do what I do differently from a lot of people, from most people. And I use a method which I swear by, and I've been using for 10 years, and it levels the frets with the neck under compression, which in fact, all other methods don't. Now, why is that important? Because it's important because when you take any wooden neck and what do you do? When you have a wooden neck and you add tension of the strings, that wooden neck, as we know, it bends, right? First thing, it kind of bends, as we've seen. That's why we control the bending with the, what's that thing? Truss rod. But it doesn't just bend, it does something else. It can't bend too far, so what it also does is it compresses, because it's getting squeezed from end to end. And as it compresses, it causes the wood in the neck to bunch up. And the fun part is that how much it does it and how it does it, where it bunches and where it doesn't, is entirely down to each neck, and every neck bunches differently under load. So we have a neck here, which is being loaded by these 8 strings, and it's causing the neck to slightly curve, and we've controlled that in doing our setup, or setting up the action, as you saw. But now we're also recognizing that it creates a certain bunching. Now, if we use the conventional fret leveling method, which is that you take the strings off and you set the neck to dead flat, and then you run a flat beam up and down it, you get frets eventually which are flat relative to each other when the neck is also flat. But the trouble is, the neck isn't flat when you play it. Now we know that it's curved slightly, and that isn't the important bit. The important bit is when you've got all your strings on and you're playing it, it's compressed from end to end, and it makes the neck do a funny thing, like I just said. So this tool is tuned to mimic the curve on this neck. So what it means is I am leveling the frets as they are under load. So that means bunched, and I've got a curve that basically represents the curvature on the neck, but the curve on the tool is without all the bumps that are in the neck, which we know is organic, made of wood, and we know bends. And so with this little bit of leveling straight away, I can look at the way the material is cutting. Where's my brush gone, please? I lost it. I took it over here. Yeah, so I can tell from where it's cutting, how it's cutting, what the neck is doing. So at the moment, it's cutting there, not so much there, but there. Okay, so that's all about okay. That's a little bit low there. That's okay. That's low here. Okay, low a bit, okay-ish, and then low right at the end. So we've got a highish spot here, a low spot straight afterwards, a couple of frets, maybe 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got a high spot, a low spot, and then we come back up to a high spot here, and then immediately it goes to three low frets at the end. So you can see that there are these up and downs, and that's not surprising, and it's not any more extreme than I've seen on many guitars. But the important thing is that when we play the frets, or play the notes, the strings on the frets, that we get notes. Now here, now we get a little bit of zizzing, but not that much to worry about, but I'm just keeping an ear open for it. We are almost dead flat. I'm going to take a tiny bit off this relief and go a little bit more. I think I've taken that quite extreme, but let's go a tiny bit more than no relief. So that means to put some curvature into it, some downwards curve. So I go counterclockwise and I go a little bit, maybe a tiny bit more. So I've added a very tiny bit of relief into it. Let's hear how these sound. Okay, I like it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give this another little gentle run over with the tool. So the tool is curved to match the basic curve of the neck. And now it's a little bit, I'm going to change it on the next pass. It's now changed a little bit. So I'm just giving it a little bit of an extra kissing there. Right, so now we'll calibrate again, this time for the B track, as I call it, and we'll make sure that that's now we'll probably put a little bit more into the curvature of this tool now. I'm going to figure out where the right place to put that is on 24 fret next. So I need a bit more curvature in here, which is fine. So whoops, lifting it out of its socket. So it's you probably guessed that this tool is in fact a truss rod, and it's a Martin style truss rod, but it's made in the US, and I buy them from StewMac because the StewMac ones are shaped at this end in a way that work perfectly for this job. Okay, so I've calibrated it to follow the basic curve as described by those 3 sample points, and then I spread the strings apart and I work in now we're working in what I call the B track, which is where the B string sits. And I'm just going to, now when I do this second pass, i.e. the B track, I usually expect to see what I found in the high E track to be the trims of the frets to be or to continued as they come across the radius. So I'm just having a nice little go and a feel. Yeah, it's not too bad, not too bad. High spot still around about here, these 3. Low spot about here, high again, and better at the ends now. So it was the far ends that were sitting a little bit low, but doesn't carry on all the way through. So anyone who's worried about dust on the pickups, don't. The fret dust is not magnetic, it does not get into the pickups, and it does not get pulled towards them. Okay, now I'm going to calibrate for the G track, and so basically going to go all the way across there with these. Now the thing is, I am going to probably, even if this is still running, How are we on? We're on 50 minutes. I'm going to run out of time tonight because that's just the way it is. So I will park this and I will continue on Saturday. So that's fine. I've got the important bits done. Tiny bit more curvature needed. Yeah, so it'll be in two goes. So now I'm doing the G track, and I'll stop when I've gone all across the strings. So here comes the G track. Pull it out of the way. Spread the strings with a little rubber what's it, and there we go. So I really hardly have to give it any pressure. It's mostly gravity doing it, and it takes a few years of practice to be able to judge things and to make the right judgment calls, which sometimes can frighten people with any leveling method, you know, which is, have I taken too much, or when should I stop, or when are the frets needing replacement. So we've got a high spot right here. This is coming up quite high in the middle, but it's okay. So we're tackling it. So high spot right there, high spot there. It kind of follows that while obviously high frets get in the way of fretted notes, it's the low frets, or frets seated in low spots, patches in the neck, which cause the most trouble, because the low, if you fret in a ditch, or a valley as I call it, the hills and valleys, if you fret in a valley, what happens is the next fret, even though it's normal height, will behave as if it's high, and it will choke out the fret. So it's as we're leveling and we see which areas are high and low, we know that the low areas are going to be the ones. Now, taking down the high areas helps, which is what I'm doing with this method, but it's the lower the valley is, the more we have to average it out in order to free up the little bit of clearance. And these things work at microscopic measurements, so it's very difficult we can't do it with measurement. We just have to do it by like this, so that we use our ears and our fingers to find out whether the notes are playing, and keep leveling if they aren't. Like I said, though, after years of experience, you'll know, you'll have the experience base to know this is not leveling out, I need to stop, this is costing too much metal, there's something wrong beyond this. And occasionally there can be things wrong that catch you out, and usually I find when I first started doing this, I could get caught out and carry on leveling thinking I was going to get there, and then realise, I'd taken a load of fret wire and I was never going to fix the problem, because the problem wasn't, let's say, coming from uneven frets. It might have been caused by something else. But the more experience that you get, the better you'll be able to, if you use this fret leveling method, the better you'll be able to judge when to stop and rethink, or stop and consider what alternatives you've got. Because just keeping on doing it until, in the hope that it's going to make it work, when it's in fact not the fret evenness that's the problem, is a great skill to have. Once I think I remember in the past, when I was very new to doing this, I did level. In fact, I was using I wasn't using this method. I was using the old method, so a file, quite a heavy duty file, plus a fret rocker, and I kept checking the fret rocking, and it kept telling me that one fret was high, and so I had to carry on leveling with my very, very hungry file, and eventually got to a place where I kind of half killed a brand new set of frets that I'd fitted myself, and I was just thinking, what the hell was going on? And I realised, to my horror, that my aluminium rocker, square edge, flat edge rocker thing, basically had grooves because it had been used so much. It had grooves where the typical, these 3 frets that it was resting on would sit, and as a result it was never going to register as flat. So I was flattening the frets relative to each other and then checking with this thing that had basically curves in it. It was showing me clicking, and then I carried on leveling, which was really destructive. So I kind of realized halfway through ruining all the frets on that neck. Not clever, but you only do that once in 10 years. Okay, so now I'm on the low E, and we're going to go on to the whatever that note is afterwards. I know, you can tell I don't play 7 strings, give me a break. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this leveled, make sure all these are leveled, and then I'll come back, or I'll do a bit of crowning here before I shut the camera off. I'll crown it, and then I'll leave it ready for sanding and polishing the frets out on Saturday, and we'll finish up on Saturday. Very good. What helps with this guitar is that it's a flat radius, so it has to be pretty well out of whack to get lots of bends on the lots of choke outs on bends. As it happens, it's being such a nice flat radius, it's very tolerant of uneven frets as far as bends are concerned. But I'm making sure that all the notes here play and bend nicely, so it's still worth doing. Okay, I think give this a little test. There's a tiny little bit of what I call slap there around the 12th fret on the low note, and what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to give it a little bit more leveling with a bit of pressure around that 12th fret. That's all I'm going to do, and once I'm there I'm going to stop, call it quits. Now the one thing let's do before I switch off for the night, one thing I will do is let's just see how badly broken this is noise wise. So let me put this out of the way. We'll do. Let's get me out the dusty amp and a bit of noise. Thank you. Let's try. Well, truth is, it's not going to play. It's probably broken off in several places. That's fine. We'll take it apart and do whatever isn't working. Now, so the things I've still got to do is I've got to get all these strings off, and they're going in the bin as chunky but not needed. We'll take the strings off, bin them. I want to take the bridge off and clean it. It's pretty filthy and it's got some rust going on. I'm going to shave down the nut. I'm going to look at the tuner, these little split pins, whatever they're called, washers, and see if I can find some alternatives. I'll see what's broken. There's quite a few fiddly little things to do, but we'll come to that next time. I normally would do a job like this in one evening, but In this case, I had quite a bit of work to do on another job, making some inlays for a pedal board. Some repair inlays for a pedal board, where somebody had hand carved and had got a bit messy looking. So let me just cut these strings right off so I can bin them. Simple way. Oh, they're chunky. So remember, having done this fret work, the great thing about it is now I can move everything around. We could take the neck off, we could take the bridge right off, take all the saddles apart, which I probably will do, put it all back together again, and none of that matters, because when I want to dial back in the action I want, I can just go back to very low light action and it will play. So I've made it ready to play at that action no matter what I do in the in-between time, which is great. So I could take it all to strip down to absolutely nothing, and it would be waiting for me to just load it up with strings, same gauge strings. It will go back to where we had it. So I'm going to now mark up these strings again. Everything's pretty filthy, but we'll get it all cleaned up. Mark up the frets, they're called, those things, and mark a pen on them, and we're going to recrown. So if you remember, I said that when we level frets off, I get a little bit flattened, because that's what we're doing to level them. We're taking down taking something off the high ones, and a little bit off the high ones, and leveling it all out. So what we do is we use this tool, and it's called a crowning file. And the idea is, I run it across the top of the fret, and the concave edge of this file basically rounds off the flat edge of the fret from where I leveled it. And I just do that until I leave just the thinnest little bit of black marker going across the top. And the reason for leaving that is that it tells me I haven't scraped the top of the fret any further, so that if it was relatively level before, it's still going to be the same now. And that's all I do. Now, the more leveling I've had to do, the more a crowning it'll take. But even still, you can see I'm whizzing along on the fourth one already, so it doesn't take an awful long time. And if you get into doing this kind of thing with your guitars, you don't have to spend on this expensive file from American company StewMac. You can do a similarly good, as good a job with a special three-sided file. And I say special, it's only special because it has three file edges, but three file sides. It's a triangular file, but one of the edges is softened so that you can rub it against the wood and it won't hurt it. So you can see I'm spending more time here, so we had a really high spot. Now, right now, this area on the neck might not actually be high relative to the others. I can see it's taken a bit of a beating around here before, so I think somebody might have been bashing in frets here to try and get them lower. Now the funny part is that would tie in exactly with why I'm doing exactly what I'm doing now, which is these frets were high, and now I am completing the process of leveling them lower. So what somebody tried to do in the past with a hammer, and usually ends up missing the fret or tilting the hammer so it hits the wood as well. It's totally understandable, but it's a telltale sign of what's gone on. But that's no surprise, because these frets were high. So somebody will have probably noticed that and said, I can't live with this, I want a low action, but these damn frets are getting in the way, and taken the hammer to it. Which, since most frets are often put in with hammers anyway, why not? But this is the best way to make it play really, really well. Now, it comes as a surprise. It did to me, and it probably comes as a surprise to anyone who hasn't spent time thinking about it, that almost all guitars come with uneven frets. That's partly true because some of the frets are actually uneven, i.e. they haven't been perhaps hammered in at the same, or they've been driven in with a different strength or whatever. There can be different reasons. But now, one of the things that I've become convinced of over time is that who knows whether they're even or not until you load the neck up under compression of the string loading. Then it goes into its bunched up default kind of topography, and then you've got a series of high and low frets getting in the way of you trying to play your guitar nice and low. And that's why I use this method, because it will take care of the frets when they're under load. Now, I don't need them under load to do this part because I'm just rounding off each fret individually to make it more of like a smooth arch shape. The actual levelness, the relative levelness between all the frets has been set, as you saw a minute ago, while the strings were on and fully loaded. So that will revert back to being in the right position and the frets all being level when I put the strings back on at the end, new strings on, put it under load, and then this neck will go back into its position we had it while we were doing the leveling. And it'll do that, forever really. So that's why I have always leveled frets, because I used to think it was because all guitars had badly seated frets and they were all uneven to some degree or other. And in fact, they are all uneven, but what I didn't know at that time, I didn't learn till about 8 years later, was that the unevenness is caused by the longitudinal compression. And so if any guitar with strings on it is suffering from or experiencing longitudinal compression, then it follows why, or it explains why pretty much every guitar I ever saw had uneven frets. And now this method is just perfect for determining how uneven they are, and as you can see, putting them right. And the action that this will come back to you with will be unbelievably low. And as I said to your mum, I said, bottom line is if you can't immediately tell the difference, the bottom line is I haven't done anything to it, because I know that what I do will make that difference. That's the beauty of figuring this out the way I did and doing it for as long as I've done it. Okay, so that is okay, that's it for, let me just do a little bit of investigation while we're here before we close everything down for the night. Let's have a look down in here, if I can zoom in enough. It's not the best of views, but if I look at this tuner and I take this, there you go, it's loose already. It's kind of loose generally, but if I take off its little tightening thing, the reason they've got these little washers and little compression things is basically so that you can tighten them up without them, you can tighten them up and they can sort of pull in, but they don't get stuck. So what we've got here is we've got two little metal washers on there, and we've got one supposed to be nylon washer, but you can see it's broken. And so what happens is, instead of having a kind of compression, so when you put this on, you used to get this pushing against those two little washers, and the push of the nylon, the sponginess of the nylon, gave you a little bit of a soft touch. And these are okay, those are okay. That one is probably giving up. Actually, that one's lost its washer altogether. That one's okay. That one's probably okay, and so on. So, they tend to go around the same time. They decay over time. So normally these are little nylon things. Now, of course, you can do it up, and it's going straight onto metal. So you can see it's not the end of the world, but that was a little circular plasticky clip. ring that went over there, and you can see that it's gone. It's gone and broken. So what we can also check once we get the tuners or the strings off, it's always a good idea to make sure that the tuners are in fact tightened up anyway, because often they can come undone over time, and loose tuners never helped anyone. They tend to mess up the screws on the other side and things become rattly and loose. Okay, so I probably need to try and nick some of these little things, but like I say, it will stay on and do its thing even without the little what's it. It just doesn't quite have the spring it has. Mind you, it isn't really that bad. That one feels a bit clunky. Again, none of them are too bad. They all work. That one's got a bit of a rattle in it, so we can again do this one up a bit more and it will take the rattle out of it, but it will probably I think that washer has gone from there, so that one's running on 2 bits of metal. So if I can find some, I will fit them, but if I can't, it's not the end of the world, but it's just a little thing to notice. Although, like I say, they sort of do work even with metal on metal, but they've got 2 washers, which again gives a little bit of leeway for squeezing together. If they were the sprung washers, it would be so much better. But yeah, they're always on every guitar. You'll find that these little nylon rings will go at some point. And if they ever go and start grinding, so it feels horrible to adjust them, you can always get a 7-string set of tuners from somewhere else. Now, before I just switch off the thing, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to the nut. So we don't need any of that space, any of that spare material above the string. So I can start by taking down a fair amount of this material, providing I leave enough for the strings to sit in. I don't obviously want to overdo it and find myself with not enough groove left, but this way I can just be sure that if I needed to, I can gauge it now. There's still plenty of room for the strings to sit in there, but at this end, at the treble end, you're always going to tend to have a much deeper slot than you need, and a deep nut slot isn't doing anyone any good. It's just a place to risk trapping the strings. So taking them down to something more less bulky is not a bad thing to do. So I can see again they're coming down in bulk, and then we can also go on this side and take down the excess sharp corner, I should say, on here, so we don't want that getting in our way. And the same comes up on this side. Sorry if you can't see it for a minute, I'm just giving a little round over here so we don't have a big sharp edge. Sorry, no view at all, forgive me. Zoom out, quick zoom out. Okay, so I can round this off a bit too, and everything suddenly feels a little bit softer. So there's still more to go on that, but I'll leave that and you get the idea anyway. That's what we're doing, just improving it. And then I'll go over it with a couple of lighter grade grit sanding blocks. It doesn't need to be super shiny. I really don't go for that sort of ultra polished thing, but you know, we can just smooth it out so we don't see any, you know, big, what's the word, not grain, stripes, marks. Okay, so this is still got quite a lot of depth there. Yeah, plenty. It's not too much, but it's just fine. So there we have a nicely hand-fitted, hand-shaped, hand-made, hand-fitted nut ready to go. Okay, we'll leave that for the next time. Yeah, come see you on another day. Maybe we can fly away. That's a Genesis song. Yeah, this is mucky, filthy. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to do it right now, but let's, just before you go, since we can, let's just have a show and tell in there, see what we've got. Since we're going to be in the back of this next time. So we've got the ferrules for holding the 7 strings in place. 7 strings. Speaking of 7 C's, I was watching Echo and the Bunnymen in their recent gigs, and I felt terrible leaving a slightly down comment, but it was terrible, just terrible. Okay, so yeah, we're not going to get any sound of that because that's come off and broken, and that's spun around. So we'll take the knobs off as well, right? So just in case. So telltale signs, that's spun round because the jack is loose here, and it's spun around and broken off. This one's probably hanging off as well, and then this pot here is spun round until the hot lugs are touching the shielding, which probably will cut things out as well. So we'll loosen them off, rearrange them, check them all. We'll put a fresh new decent quality jack in there, which I have on the side here, a Nutric jack. We'll stick that in there, and then we'll make sure everything works, and then we'll stop the adjustments at that point. So to make move the pots, we just need to blimey, this is stiff. Sometimes you find that the pots on these things are jammed on way too hard. But we've got a pot gripping doofer. Holy cow. Right, so somebody has rammed that thing on there. Wow. That is okay. That was never intended to be taken off. I had to break the pot. We got tons of these, and we can find some more, but we can't move these and sort these out without removing these pots. So if that's going to kill them, that's going to kill them. Oh, that one's less. Well, that's also broken. Look at this. Both of them are broken. I think that's broken a different time. That's broken here from this one, and the first one, the second one, sorry, is broken from another time. Yeah, that looks like that belongs there. Yep, that's the first one broken, and that's the second one with no bits anywhere. So these are probably the wrong knobs for these pots somewhere on the way. If both of them are, one's broken now and the other one's broken from before, so we'll have to find some decent alternatives. Okay, all good, nothing to worry about, we'll sort it. Thanks for watching just now, and hope you enjoyed that little run through the precision bits. Bit of cleaning. I'm not going to bother trying to get rust off these things. You can if you want to scrape them with, stuff. It won't hurt, won't do anything any harm. You don't want to get bits in through the holes, but you can scrape them with a blade, for example, and you won't do any harm to anyone. It doesn't really make it look that fantastic though, but you can reduce the amount of the little kind of concentric circle ones. So they are that colour because they've built up some rust, as you can see, but you can sort of clean them up at your leisure if you want to do that. This has got wet somewhere, as you can tell from some of these little thingies here, grub screws, so hence I was worried that we would lose 1 or 2 of those, but we probably have spares if they were rubbish. But I'll take them out and soak them and put them through some grease and stuff, so they'll be a better fit afterwards. Right, that's it for now. See you on the next bit. So I see you again on the next day, and we have undone, taken apart, cleaned, and the grub screws greased. We have the frets leveled recrowned, sanded and polished out, and I've scraped the fingerboard as well, so a lot of the hammer blows have cleared them up, so you can't see where the there's a hole. It was very uneven, there's a lot of dents all the way up there. So we're kind of ready to go. I can't find any washers of the same size. They're very small little O-ring type things, so I'm going to have to leave them as they are, but they still function. So I was about to say we're ready to restring, but of course we're not. Let me just tell you something that happened first. In removing the these what's-its knobs broke. One of them was already broken, one broke when I was taking it off, so they are the wrong size for these what do you call them, pots. I have to take them off because I have to undo these pots and change them around. So I think the thing we need to do now is to concentrate on the electrics bit. Let's see if I can see what I'm doing here. There we are, not a great view in the world. Let's leave you there for a minute. So, he says, moving it as soon as he's got the focus on it, he moves the camera. Right, I'm going to fire up this thing here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take out this jack here and replace it with a decent quality one for starters. So out come the two whatnots, screws, and we'll just take this off. I'm going to put a decent quality Nutric one on, so we can take that off and we can just snip this one off as well, just to keep things easy. Off to one side. Now we've got the wires tied up here, which is sort of tidy, but it's keeping them a little bit taut. So let's get them freed up so we've got a bit more room, because we want to get easily out of here with this one and we want to get out of there with that one, and to be able to extend them a little bit. So we're hoping that everything else is in correct order. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can find where the thing is so I can zoom out. And to begin with, I'm going to tip this over and I'm going to just slightly loosen off. Yikes. Oh God, I don't know what that's happened there. This is in the right place, this one. I'm going to tighten it up more than anything else. This one I need to undo in order to move it. So this one's gone for a spin. I'm going to return it to its correct position. And then I'm going to tighten it up as far as I can go. So it's pointing away from the material. Okay, so hoping that those are now in the right place, let's get our wires through here that we're going to use to put on the new thing. The word is jack. Right, jack. Okay, let's go to there where you can see it, something like that. Okay, sort of. Oh, I forgot to put on my little Daddario shiny thing. Okay, so let's get the new Nutric jack. Now I'm going to put the tiniest bit of thread lock on there, if I can get this thing to find some stuff in here. This is medium sort of grip. Normally I only use low quality. Actually, this is the regular stuff, I should say, but I will use a tiny bit on here. The first thing I have to check is that this goes through here in one piece. Of course it doesn't, because this is the imperial size. So what I'll do is I will drill through this. Sometimes I drill, sometimes I don't, and I just use the reaming tool, which is a bit of a fiddle. I get myself something to hold on to it with, and then I just sort of go through like so. It only needs a little bit of widening of the hole for the socket to go through. A little bit difficult to use and hold. Drilling's not that easy either, funnily enough. You put this down in a vise and it's quite hard to hold this little piece. Okay. Let's see where we've got to. Yeah, just about. There we are. That's that done. Painless-ish. So, going back to here, I'm going to put a tiny bit of. Yeah, we zoomed in. Okay, so a little bit of thread lock on there only, and just run it into the grooves. Then we'll put this through here, and then we will put this on the outside of that. Just let me think. Maybe I have a spare one of these. That's not that one. No, I'll let it go through. That's fine. Funny enough, it looks nice and tidy when you have this, when the socket doesn't go very far through. But the downside is that it allows your jack plug to go further in, and actually we don't really want the jack plug to go too far in, because further in it goes, the more it gets in the way of things inside the guitar. Whereas if it sits out a bit, we tend to have less problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tighten this up now with these what's it. There we go. And then we will prepare these little wires for some soldering. So strip them back, make sure that they go okay. Yep, that's fine. It goes to the pot top, and we'll do the same with the white. So what I'm going to do now at this point is I'm going to just put a little bit of solder on these. Old rag to support this. I just sort of yank it out of the way if I can. I have got my gripping hands here, but to be honest, they're still going to be a pain to get out. So I'll just use that. Where's my solder, please? Let's get this little one here. Now I suppose what we could have for fun is we could have ourselves a shrink tube. I think this will be about the right size, probably, maybe. Let's just see if it does. Yeah, just about fits. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of this on each one of these. Let it fall back, and then we're going to do a little bit of the soldering. Tin up. Okay, so we'll leave those dangle in there, and then we'll come through here one by one. This is where it gets a little bit of a stretch because it wants to go back through. You can't really see, but you probably can now. So we have the black. The black is the ground. That's what we're using it for, and we'll make it go here. What did I just do with these? No, get back on. You shrink wrap, you. So this is where the helping hands would be convenient, but I'm going to try and just squeeze it in place like so. Nope, it's definitely not going to do it without the hands. The hands of help. So I can lock it somewhere safely out of the way. You can always balance it one way or another if you're careful. Until you can't. So that's mighty clumsy. Let's clean that up a bit. Nice, nice, nice. Clean up a bit on the inside. And then we have, when it's cool, we can shove this bit of shrink tubing over it. And as always, it doesn't quite go over the blasted. There's a little sticky out bit here, and these side cutters probably aren't good enough to flatten the burr. So I'll use my file if I can. So you can see it's all a bit out of the way now. Yep. Okay, so we can get this on here now. Much better. Now we come to the hot wire. Do the same thing, and this is got a blob on it, which we can do with that. And we'll sort of prop that up a bit like so. Very nice. There we go. Again, this has a little bit of burr on the opposite side, so we'll snip that off as well as we can. And then onto here we'll push that. Now we'll get the hot air blower thing, hot air gun, and we'll shrink those tubes. Turn off the soldering iron because we should be nice and done. And to do this, we'll pull this a bit of a stretch away from the body, if we can. Damnations. Stay. Right, so we have now our banana. Are you still running? Yes, you're still running, but you're a bit zoomed out. Sorry about this a minute. I don't know where that's gone out. Thank you. So, there we have it. The jack nicely tightened up, everything's good. Drop that in there. Screw in the screws all the way in, and we're good to go. Now we're going to put some new knobs on, but we have to make sure that they'll fit. I don't think these are imperial pots by any means because they're very small and they don't look it. But let's do the first thing. Let's make sure that the pickups work before anything else, because no point thinking we're done. Bridge. Middle. All right, fixed. Lovely. Right, so now put away these odds and sods. Let's do up the case cover. I'll leave the wires out. We don't need to, there's not so much wire in there that it needs to be tied up again with a cable tie. It only looks neat. There's there's tons of room in there. So we'll do everything up, and we're then pretty much ready to restring. We'll get the knobs on, restring. I can see in this light now, I can see where it's been painted along the edge, where it's been dinged in the past. So it's gloss paint along the edge, and this is a satin finish, but still looks okay. No harm. Okay, so just tighten those up. And while I'm at it with the screwdriver, I'm just going to check the tightness of the neck screws. I'll do them hand tight. I sort of know from experience how tight they need to be, and I can tighten this one up a little tiny bit. That's good. That's good. So everything now ready to go with strings. I think what we could do is put a little tiny bit of oil on here. We can use an old cloth, which I'll throw away because these have all pretty much had their day. Time to buy some more. I'm living on old tea towels at the moment, which isn't such a bad thing really. So oil is just used to make the fingerboard look a little bit darker and more exotic. People say, oh, my fingerboard looks really dry. And when you use something like naphtha, this cleaner here, it does pull out some of the oils from the fingerboard, but that's okay. So it's when people say dry, they don't mean lacking water. What they really mean is the oils there isn't much oil in it, and the oils in wood. Some woods have a bit of naturally occurring oil, but most of the oils that we like in guitar fingerboards, so that looks nice and dark now, but it looks that way because well, we like it that way, we get used to it that way because what we are used to is the oil from our fingers that goes on the neck, and so we kind of confuse the two, but it's familiar to have a darkened fingerboard. Now I've got some fast speed knobs here. They're about the same, but they've got a little bit more grip on them, which I quite like, so I'm going to put those on for you, and I'm going to give them a little push down, not too hard. If you push these too hard, you'll end up with breaking the pot or the plastic. So there we go, nice, all good. I'll throw these away because where's the broken one? Those are good ones. The broken one's over here somewhere. Anyway, I'll chuck them away, the broken ones, because they're not usable anymore. Okay, so now is the time. Now is the winter of our restringing. And restringing is the final thing in the thing of things. Really? So what do I mean by that? Actually, it's the final thing in the final piece in the equation of making your guitar play and stay in tune. And when you're starting out, I know you're not, but when you're starting out playing guitar, sometimes because you play a lot on your own, it's easy to overlook if your guitar doesn't stay in tune very well. But if you play with other people, you find very quickly that you're the weak link, and they get really annoyed if you're not in tune with them. And sometimes people don't really even notice it. Everybody gets annoyed because it just sounds horrible. So as I got older, I learned that being in tune, staying in tune, is probably more important than anything else for me in a guitar. And as I started out this video talking about how every guitar can be made to play with a really nice low action, you can also make every guitar play and stay in tune. And the secret to that is really two main parts. First of all, it isn't anything to do with the tuners. So that's the weird thing. You can always get a good conversation going amongst your mates if they're all talking about their guitars not being in tune, and one person is suggesting to another person a different kind of tuner, you know, more expensive tuners, Gotos or whatever, Spurtzels. There's plenty of expensive things you can buy if you want to, but you could shock them with the truth, which is your tuning machines up here have nothing to do with your guitar staying in tune. They're, of course, they're to do with tightening the strings up and getting the guitar up to pitch. And if you have more expensive ones, you get a better quality experience, you get nicer materials, more precise gearing and so on. But any quality of tuner, so long as it's not jammed, but any quality of tuner will get you up to pitch. But the tuner at that point doesn't have any role to play in whether your guitar stays in tune from that point onwards or whether it doesn't. So what is the source of it staying in tune or not staying in tune? And that is two components. The first one is the nut you use. So the material of the nut, the way the slots are cut, the height over the first fret, which is why I do it the way I do it, very low and so on. And I use Tusq. And once I make sure that that first fret action is the right low height, and I make sure the slots are cut properly so the strings move without catching up, and it's the right material. Tusq is my preference. So then once I've got those things done, that's the nut taken care of, but that's only 50% of my tuning stability equation. The other 50% is the amount of unreleased slack in your strings, the new strings when you put them on. Let me just get a little motorized winder here, make things a bit quicker. Can you see? You're down there. Are you actually recording? Yes, you are. 26 minutes. Okay, where are we? Hello, there we are. Can't see much. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is remember, half of it is the nut and half of it is the slack in your strings. So what we're going to do is we're going to get all the strings on and tightened up to pitch, and then we're going to see what it takes to stretch all of the slack out of the strings. Now often people think, you know, putting them on and giving them a quick sort of pull is good, or leaving them overnight is great. Maybe, yeah, it helps a little bit, but to get the strings to stay in tune, you're going to need to manually stretch out all the slack. So let's start with just the putting on the strings. Here's how I do it. I pull the ball of the string up into the body of the guitar, make sure it's all the way up, make sure it's tight, come along to the first fret, pull back to just past the second fret, and then I wind on. And I hold this one, this is the held part and that's the loose part. The held part I keep under tension, doesn't matter how I do it, I can pull it sideways if I like, but I keep it under tension. I could run it like that, I could pull it off sideways. And I make sure, first of all, the held one, as I wind on, it goes over the loose one. Put that over the top. Then, as the loose one comes around, this time I push the held one under the loose one. See that? That's probably going to need to pull up a little bit, but so the point being is we've got the loose one coming out between the two coils of the string, and if I pull it tight, it'll come up, fit nice and tight. So there we have it, the minimum amount of extra string. We don't need any more on the peg than that. Keeps it to a workable minimum. I can cut the excess string off. There's no bits sticking out that kill me. And then we go to the next string, run it through, hold it at this end, keep it reasonably taut, pull that up. That jumped up a bit because it wasn't quite fitting up inside the ferrule. First fret, back past the second fret, hold this one tight, wind on, hold it over the loose one, guide it under the loose one as we come around the next time, and then pull it up so it sort of forms a little natural little locking device. You see that? Very nice and simple. And then cut very close to the peg, so we get the same, approximately the same amount of wire on there each time. We do that for all 7 of these strings. Again, make sure the ball's all the way up in there. Hold it at the first, back just past the second. Tighten over the loose one, this time under the loose one as it comes round. There we go. Twang. Now my action's all gone here because I took the bridge all apart, so I have to remember, well, I've remembered that, so I'll need to reset the playing action at the last fret again. So pull back. Now this time, because I'm changing sides, I'm going to hold the string down there with that hand. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to wind on. And I'm going to use my pressure of my thumb on here to hold the string over, let it ride loosely just enough, and then tighten up as it goes over the loose string. Hold it tight. Now pull this one up, still holding this in kind of stretchy gymnastics to keep it tight, and we want this one to go under the loose string this time. Now we may get a bit more on here than before, but it's not a problem. It'll work its way up like that. So we've got a little bit more than we needed, but it's no problem. Ow. And then cut short again. So it's a bit of a funny gymnastics of the hand. Now I made things a bit easier by lining up all the holes on these tuners before I started. So all the way on, back a fret and a bit, wind it on, leave it loose enough just, now that's too loose so it's flipped over, but I'm going to go and hold it there. It's over the loose one, so we're over the first time, and this time we go under and let the loose one wind its way round. And if it comes round another time, that's no problem. Only I have to get my finger out of the way. So it's a little bit more on the plain strings. It doesn't hurt to have that little bit more on there. If any strings are ever going to slip, they don't tend to unwind bit by bit. If they're going to slip, they'll slip in one go. And they occasionally will be the plain ones if you haven't got enough wraps around here. So, you know, I'm doing it to a fret length and a centimetre, if you like. So hold it on the first fret, back just over the hump of the second fret. So I'm getting a bit more than about 3 turns around here. Over the top. This time, hike that up, grab that, twist it. So I'm still keeping it all under tension and just directing it under the loose string. There we go. Always take your finger out before you apply the final tension, because I've done it quickly sometimes and got caught out, and it's bloody painful. Okay, so I didn't bring my little tuner back, so I'm going to have to be using the tuning fork for this bit. So first fret, pull back 1 and a tiny bit, hold it there, run it round, outward, under, yep, yank it up to be sure, pull it tight, twist it, send it under. Maybe 2, 3, even coming around, going to come around 3.5, that is, so that's no problem. So there's all my strings pulled back. Now what I'm going to do is, before I do anything else, I'm just going to lightly tug these and make sure they're seated properly, and that any main slack is just obviously pulled up, like if the strings have to pop up a little bit on the pegs there, or if they're caught on the edge of the ferrule at the back, they'll pop through. Now as I give them a gentle tug, this one's a bit too tight. Like I said, the action's all wrong to begin with. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put these on, I'm sitting the deck. Okay, I'm going to get my thingy. This may take a little minute or two as we go back through the whole process of setting the action. So I'm going to start by making some guesstimates. speed's sake. I really messed these up completely. Well, I took them all completely apart, so none of them bear any relation to where they were before. So it's no surprise there will be some difference. And then I'll come back through measuring as we go. But remember I said to you beforehand that the nice thing is you could take the whole guitar apart, strip off the neck, take the bridge apart into components, and when you come back and put the same kind of gauge strings on and go back and put everything to the action you chose before, you can keep in mind that I've leveled the frets for that chosen action, so we can now go back to that action in the knowledge that it's going to work just fine because we set it up with that playing action. So there's a start now. Want a little bit of tension so I can check the heights and do some tweaks. Okay, so we're under 1.25 there, so we'll go up to 1.25. I trust. Just about. That's under 125. So we'll go up again with this one. About right, but should be a tiny bit higher. Go up on that one. And D. A little bit higher. A. Bit more. Oh, hang on, that's the D I'm in. Steady on. Sun, A, so look at the A, that's over 125, yes, that's down. We're supposed to be having some nice weather next week, one day I think, Monday probably, looks like, something at about 18. Okay, 125, about 125, about 125, tiny bit over, coming up a bit, that's about right. And then I can double check my little gaps over here, and where it needs to come up a bit, we can just do the tiniest of tweaks, which is cool, and then perhaps a tiny tweak down. Okay, that will do me for now. So that's me action at this end. Now we're going to tune the strings up for the first, sorry about this, the first tuning since the new strings have gone on. Oh, this is not wrong string. See, caught myself out there. A is this one, wrong string. Which one am I on? 4 on one side, it's this one. Okay, we might fine tune the action again in a minute, but so there's our guitar roughly at pitch. So now what I'm going to do is the thing you need to do when you put new strings on, is grab the string between thumb and forefinger and push and stretch. Try to keep the kind of movement and tension off these points here and at the other end, and just make the stretch happen between the thumb and the forefinger as you're doing it. Now what you'll notice is even that little bit of stretching, manual stretching, detune that quite a lot. It's going to do the same for all the strings. So we go through the whole set of strings and we stretch the heck out of them. Now the heavier gauge strings, like these are fairly heavy gauge, they're 10 top ends and then heavy bottom end, but there'll be quite a lot of give in the wound strings compared to the plain strings. The plain strings will settle in tune first. The wound strings will keep on giving up slack for some time, but not maybe as much as if they were of much narrower gauge. So now we go to our chord, beautifully our tune. So we've stretched out a bunch of slack. We tune up again. So not used to playing with a 7th string. Okay, so that's the first stretch. Come back again and do it again. Now, bottom line with this is, I know for youngsters, like I was once, doing this is a pain. You just want to be getting out with your mates and playing, or plugging in and playing along to your favourite record or whatever. Record? What's one of those, Sam? Well, a vinyl disc, you see, made of plastic. Anyway, vinyl made of plastic, plastic made of vinyl. But anyway, but if you do this stretching once, or several times, when first get the strings, new strings fitted, you will not have to mess about going out of tune and retuning constantly while you're either playing in your room on your own, or out there practicing with friends. So it's really important to do this. So not much detuning. Wrong one. Okay, so we're nearly there. You can give it some little pulls as well in the other directions, but the thumb and forefinger stretches are your best bet really for safety. On heavy gauge strings like these wound ones now, you can knock them around and they'll not break on you. much in tune. Okay, now the tuning is stabilized. So now the question is, we're looking at intonation, and we want to make sure that each string is intonated. What does that mean? Well, for any given scale length of guitar, every string on the guitar has a very slightly different scale length, or playing length. So they all work to a single scale length, which in this guitar will be whatever it is. I didn't measure it, but let's say the quick way of finding out, if you ever want to know, is get a long ruler and measure from the front of the edge of the nut to the middle of the 12th fret. And this is 3, is that 12th fret? Yeah, it is. It is 3, 30, stay there, 335, 336, 337. 337. What in the hell scale is that? Let's write it down. That's an unconventional number. 337 to the halfway point times 2 is what am I doing? Times 2 is 674. 674. Huh? That's a strange scale. What on earth is 674? 674? 337. Do you know what? I'm going to use. Well, I'm not until I start it up. That's a strange length. 337. Let's just double check to make sure I haven't gone completely mad. Yeah, so anyway, your notional, your basic scale length is twice the distance from the front edge of the nut to the 12th fret. So times that by 2, and we have 335, 36, 337, as I said. 337 times 2 equals 660, 674, which I was correct in saying, 674. What is that in inches? That's a 26-inch scale. 674. Let's see if I can figure that out. Oh, of course I don't have. Oh, hellfire! I don't have any access to the internet. I only have it on that phone there. We don't need to worry about that. We know what it's meant to be. The great thing is, even if you don't have a thing to measure it, the whole point about setting the intonation on the guitar is we do it by pitch. So we tune our open note close to the correct note, there we go. Then we ping the 12th fret harmonic and tune it to that. So here we are, dead in tune, and then we press the note of the 12th fret. Now, if it's dead on the same note as the pinged harmonic, that's dead on E, that's pretty much on E, that tells us that this saddle is in the right place. Let's try and find one that's sharp or flat. So we tune the pinged harmonic for B. Twelfth fret. It's about right too. Go to the G. Tune it as close as we can get to pitch. And that looks sharp. It settles, but it's still a little bit sharp. You can hear it. So that needs to come back. Sorry, if it's sharp, it means the distance is too short. So that one's playing sharp, so we're going to pull this saddle back a little bit, and we're just going to make sure that it is the right length. So we'll try it again. That's obviously gone up in pitch. So tune it back to the G. Wrong bleeding. Let's go for the wrong peg on these things. Okay. A. Good. Looking a bit sharp there, and I can see why. So sorry about the whiz round. So that low B note, is it B? Probably. See that low B note came for sharp, and that's because this is too far forward. That should be staggered back. See how we go. Furthest forward, next one, next one, next one back. The first wound string. Oh, hang on. Duh. So wait a minute, first wound string should be forward of the others. Let me go backwards. What on earth is going on here? Come along, this is not right. So this will show you how. Okay, that one is not telling me the truth, and everything else is right. Okay, so the D string was the first wound one, and I should have had it going a little bit further forward. Right, those are in the right position now. You think, why on earth, how do you know that? Well, you made all that up. Well, the good thing is there's a familiar pattern with 6 or 7 string sets, so that they go high E is the shortest playing length of all. Next wound one, the B, is the next shortest. G, or plain G, is the next shortest. Then the wound D. Oh, wrong one again. Wound D. Wound D comes forward of the plain G. Comes forward of the plain G, which it does. How much forward? I'm going to try and take it back a tiny bit. So that's the wound, no, wrong way. That's the wound D. Then we have wound A, wound E, and wound B. So let's just get this done. G. Feedback. Something's ringing. Interesting. Not the strings. Wow. Something is picking up that note and ringing it. Hear it? Still going. There we go. A, Okay, we're finally done. Yeah, there we have it. All done, all fixed up, ready to go. Oh, one last little thing. We put on the little cover for the truss rod. Now this is missing some screws, so we might be able to find a couple of diddy screws in here that will do the job. Yeah, it should work. There we go. Go along, go along. Let's try and find our way in there. Not easy. Okay, I think that's in. Yep. Let's get this one in, which is a different one. Let's try the same, all three. Might as well, eh? It's got a real storm blowing outside. Storm David, I believe. There we go. So breezy. It's sort of funny today. I was noticing and missing our cat, Morris's sister, Yummy, who died a couple of days ago before the weekend. We are at the weekend. Died on Thursday or something, I can't remember now, Wednesday or Thursday. Anyway, and I just noticed her absence today. When I would be in the kitchen normally, she would spring up immediately onto the side of the kitchen and, you know, make herself known and come looking for attention or some evaporated milk or something she shouldn't have. And missed her doing that the last few days now, and yeah, we won't do it again. There we have it, ready to go, ready to play. Super low action. I might tweak it again at home when I give it a little test play, but in terms of the action height, but pretty good for now. So there we are, all done, dusted. Thanks for watching. Yeah, that I'm going to take a picture in a second of that scale length. I'm going to write it on my hand, 674. Find out what that is in inches, because I've never seen that. It's an odd length, but doesn't matter. That is the scale length you've got. If you measure your neck halfway, or yeah, measure your halfway point on your neck, basically your scale length will be twice that. Even if you don't recognize the scale. And of course the thing is, it tells you, what that tells you is you can build a guitar to any scale you like, providing you put the frets in the right place. So thank you for watching. See you again soon.